After graduating from a socialite training course, my sister swears to marry into a wealthy family to create encounters with Pierce Holden, the prince of the upper crust. She drives my car, wanting to tailgate him and run into his car. I slam the brakes and tell her the Holdens aren't fools. We can't afford to pay for Pierce's car even if we were to give up everything we have. Later, Pierce throws a lavish wedding that stuns the country. My sister goes crazy with jealousy, saying that she would have been the bride if not for me stopping her back. Then, out of resentment, she rams her car into me and kills me. When I open my eyes again, I find myself in the front passenger seat. My sister smirks confidently, her gaze fixed on the expensive car ahead of us. I'm sure Pierce will be enchanted by me once he sees me. I won't need to drive a dump like this once I get together with him. This time, I don't stop her. She puts the pedal to the metal, making the car crash against the sports car worth of fortune with a violent crash. The sports car skidded forward for a moment before coming to a halt. A loud noise caught the attention of several passers-by who stopped to watch. The car was severely damaged. The rear wing fell off with a loud clang, and the body was deeply dented. But my sister, Quincy Scott, didn't seem to care. She quickly recovered from the shock and touched up her makeup as she gazed into the rearview mirror. She intentionally messed up her bangs, rubbed her eyes to bring up tears, and touched up her lipstick just enough to make it look natural. If I hadn't seen everything firsthand, I would have thought she was just a frightened little bunny. After pulling her gaze away from the mirror, Quincy glanced at me. When she saw me sitting still, unfazed, she seemed surprised. Just a moment ago, she had placed 2 thick cushions in front of herself as a buffer and then deliberately sped up when I wasn't paying attention. If I hadn't been prepared and gripped the armrest tightly, I'd probably be slamming into the dashboard by now with a bruised face. She had been like this since childhood, always scheming to make me look awkward and foolish just to highlight her own graceful beauty. Pierce rarely shows up. Just follow my lead and don't ruin things for me. Quincy dipped her fingers in some powder and smeared it across my lips. When I become Pierce's wife, I'll have you work as a maid in the Holden residence. Pay will be better than what you're getting now. With that, Quincy tugged down the collar of her tight-knit shirt, opened the door, and stepped out of the car. In my previous life, Quincy blamed me for ruining her chance of marrying into a wealthy family. She blamed me for everything that went wrong after that. This time around, I was curious to see if she could truly change her fate with all her tricks. Quincy's arrival caused quite a stir. A few guys by the roadside were already snapping pictures with their phones. She was always proud of her figure. With that body-hugging skirt, she was naturally the center of attention. Pierce Holden didn't get out of the car. A sharply dressed driver walked around the sports car inspecting it. Then he approached the window, bent down, and exchanged a few words with Pierce. Quincy sidestepped the driver who wanted to talk to her and knocked on the car window. As she spoke, she wiped away fake tears with her fingers. Her hair fluttered in the wind, giving her an air of fragility. A moment later, Pierce pushed open the car door and glanced in my direction. Then his gaze shifted to Quincy. The so-called Prince of the Upper Crust was known for being mysterious and low-key. Countless actresses had tried to get close to him, but they never had the chance. Quincy lowered her head and intertwined her well-maintained hands. Then, as if making some major decision, she pulled out her phone to dial the traffic police. I saw Pierce wave his hand. He was signaling her to put the phone down. He stepped out of the car and headed toward mine. Quincy had smeared a pale, chalky powder on my lips, and after a week of overtime and late nights, my lips probably looked ghostly pale. My face, too, was completely drained of color. Through the window, I got my first up-close look at Pierce. It was August, yet he still wore a scarf around his neck. The scar slithered up from beneath the scarf, wrapping over his left cheekbone. Though it had been carefully treated, the scar was still uneven and pitted. It was a clear sign of just how deep the wound must have been. Quincy also rushed over. Her tone was filled with concern as she said, "My sister suddenly got a stomachache, and I was rushing her to the hospital. I must have mixed up the accelerator and the brakes. So no matter what, it's my fault. I'll compensate for the damage." The situation seemed to stir something in Pierce. His cold expression softened just a little as he calmly said, "No need to rush. Get your sister to the hospital first. My driver, Wilson Powell, will handle the rest." As Pierce turned to leave, Quincy quickly stepped in front of him and handed him a business card. "This is my number. I won't run away from my responsibilities." Pierce looked at the white card in Quincy's hand. It said that Quincy was a partner at a vet and a visiting professor at Winston Tourism College. He scanned her from head to toe, then took out his phone. "Now need to complicate things. Let's follow each other on Instagram." Pierre left in the Maybach that had come to pick him up. The tow truck took away the damaged sports car. The hood of my car was bent and one of the headlights was shattered. "I just got this car yesterday and you pretty much ruined it." "What are you going to do about that?" I asked. Quincy didn't even acknowledge me the moment we arrived home. She immediately latched onto Joshua's arm, claiming I was making things hard for her. Joshua Scott was my father. He patted Quincy affectionately and asked me to handle it myself. "You're really arguing with Quincy over something this trivial? You're her sister." Quincy insisted on driving that morning even though she didn't have a license. She had failed the driving test 5 times. Joshua, worried about her safety, insisted I go with her. At this moment, my stepmother, Celine Westbrook. I came out of the kitchen holding a fruit platter, but there were only 3 forks on it. They all happily ate the fruits, acting like I wasn't even there. Pierce looked at me without even blinking. I thought the so-called prince of the upper crust would be tough to seduce, but he's just like the rest of those guys, Quincy said smugly, and pulled out her phone to show off Pierce's Instagram account. "Once Quincy marries Pierce, we'll be in-laws with the Holden family." Celine clapped her hands. Joshua joined in, dreaming of a bright future. Then Quincy suddenly changed the subject while offering a piece of peach to Joshua. "Dad, I still owe $300,000 for the training program." Joshua frowned and didn't respond immediately. Our family relied on the old street stores to make a living, but with the new city planning bypassing the area, business had been bad. That so-called socialite training program charged $500,000 per person, promising to help its students cross class lines and marry into wealth. Quincy graduated from college 3 years ago. Instead of working, she had been busy with cosmetic procedures and photo shoots to build her socialite image. The previous $200,000 she had already drained Joshua's savings. "Joshua, Quincy went to that training program, so you could live a better life." Celine pushed her large gold bangle and said bluntly, "If you can't even spare this little amount of money, don't expect to benefit from Quincy's success later. Besides, someone in this family is still working. A family should help each other out." She was hinting that I should cover the cost. In my previous life, my family went into deep debt for Quincy's dream of marrying into a wealthy family. Debt collectors caused trouble at my company, leading me to lose my job. Besides, it seemed they had no idea about Pierce's sports car. They were sure he wouldn't make Quincy pay for the damages. I wasn't like them, depending on an empty dream of wealth and status. So before they could say anything, I brought up the idea of moving out. I've already found a place. I'll officially sever ties with all of you. 3 days later, Quincy's car crash video had gone viral. The comments called her a once-in-a-lifetime natural beauty. Some even compared her to popular celebrities, saying that if she joined the entertainment industry, half of the female celebrities would be out of a job. Then people began sharing Quincy's Instagram photos, hyping up her family background and taste. This made it almost impossible for Pierce not to notice her. Her fame was the best stepping stone to enter the Holden family. I had to admit that the training program was impressively efficient. After signing the purchase contract for the apartment, I returned to the Scott residence to pack my things. When Celine opened the door, she looked me up and down with disdain and asked which slum I'd found to rent a place in. Joshua didn't even glance at me. He was buzzing with excitement as he hovered around Quincy like he'd just won the lottery jackpot. "It's Pierce! He messaged me!" Quincy exclaimed. "Miss Madden said if I could get him to make the first move, I'd be 1 step closer to my goal." Closing her eyes, she pressed the phone to her heart. After a few seconds, she finally opened the message. The three of them stared at the phone, silent for a long time. I put my suitcase down and walked over to take a look. The message from Pierce read, "My car was sent back to the Swoloria headquarters for repairs. The cost is $8.57 million.